How many mistakes can I make in one sentence?
Yes. This Sunday, for reasons that the constructors of the lectionary presumably understand, but which I don't, we have the prologue of John again. I am baffled, and I'm sure we must have worked out why before, but I can't remember why we've got this reading and aren't just continuing in Mark. But what do you have to say about John 1 to 14?
Well, first of all, on the lectionary issue, remember that in our previous vlogs about Epiphany, which has been the season that we have been in, the focus was on glory, and in particular the glory of Jesus Christ, the manifestation of Jesus, identity and mission. And if one thinks that that kind of like hangs over beyond Candlemas to the Sunday before Lent, which is the Transfiguration, which is the revelation of God's glory, then you could see why the lectionary creators might slot in John 1 to 14, which is pretty big on the glory of the Word made flesh. So that's my only thought.
Okay. It would be interesting to, I'll do it later, but interesting to see if Lent was later. Lent is very early this year. Wednesday. If Lent was later, what would we be reading in the other Sundays? On the other Sundays, now we must have. I've been doing this for 45 years, so I must have done it. But to pursue that particular line of thought.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so John 1 to 14. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. A classic passage known by so many and loved by so many. Opening words that I've just said shows what's John's gospel about. It's about the Word, and the Word was in the beginning with God, and the Word was God. Who is the Word? The Word made flesh. The Word made flesh is Jesus Christ. So we hear in this prologue about a number of themes that you could pick up on and expand. First of all, the Word, and that being Jesus Christ. Secondly, that this Word is the source of the creation and of salvation. Thirdly, that the witness to this Word is in particular John the Baptist, but and also how this picks up on the story of the Old Testament, with John being effectively a new kind of Elijah before the Messiah. And you could say that one of the purposes of the prologue is to explain how the story of Jesus builds on the story of God's accompaniment of the people of God through the Old Testament. Not that, for instance, when it says no one has ever seen God, that's not a denial of, for instance, of the visions of the Old Testament, but nobody has ever seen God's face. Yeah. But if you think about some of the characteristics that come to light in the prologue, like the Word is light, is life, is grace and truth, these are, in the Old Testament, characteristics of God. So it's setting this up as kind of like the denouement of who Jesus is the one transparent to God and identifiable with God. Beyond that, it talks about how he is not well received. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. And then finally in the prologue, you get to the good news, which is, but to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of the blood, not of the flesh, nor of the will of the human being, but of God. And then ends with this climactic, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. Or as Eugene Peterson talks about, the Word moved into the neighborhood. Yeah. So there are a whole spectrum of themes that you could utilize there. One way in which I've looked at it in the past is to ask about, is the Word made flesh? Is the Word made flesh in our own lives? Because the Word has been made flesh, and this is the one who in Matthew 28 promises to be with us always to the close of the age. And one very particular way of asking that question is the Word present in our own words? do we converse in a way that enables us to be able to close whatever conversation we've had with, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, or does it not? Because that seems to me part of the challenge of our discipleship, to enable that word to be made flesh within our own lives and in our own hearts. So that's where I'd begin. What about you?
So let me pick up on the word, which you've been focusing on, and ask that basic question: why on earth does John say, "In the beginning was the Word"? Why does he not say, for example, "In the beginning was the Son"? No, he's made a very deliberate decision to use this word in this way, and in a way that you don't see reflected, for example, in the other Gospels. You don't really see reflected in the Pauline corpus, used in the same way. So why did he use the word? And I remember I imagine you might, but I remember as an undergraduate when we were doing this part of John's Gospel, all the debates we had to look at was, well, was John being influenced? And at that point, this is 50 years ago, at that point, the view was that he was influenced by the Greek philosophical world that he
Platonists,
inhabited.
Neoplatonists, etc.
So the word was a way of saying the idea, or it was the foundational principle, and so I remember writing essays about that. And but there's actually that's been held in tension with the idea that actually word is important in the Old Testament. So think about the 10 Commandments. What do we call? We call them the Decalogue, which is the 10 words. And you have a sense, creation, word, breath. They're not that far apart in terms of that expression or utterance of God. And what I think you get then in the prologue is the way in which what John is doing is taking whatever understanding we may have of word and of God's utterance of word, so that the prophets spoke the word of the Lord, whatever our understanding of that, and making it intensely and totally who Jesus is, so that Jesus becomes the fullest expression of the word. So it's when we speak words, they are part of us, but they're only a part of us. Whereas God speaks the word, and it is all of who God is. And it's Michael Ramsey's constant reminder that if we want to know what God is like, look at Jesus. So that's the kind of the first aspect for me that I think is really important. But I think what that then does is say what we have then in this this divine utterance, in this word being expressed, what we have then is one for whom everything he is, everything he does, and everything he says is a full and authentic expression of who he is. So he and in John's Gospel we have this very clear focus on his identity. I am the light of the world. I am the true vine. I am the way, the truth, and the life. So that fullness of identity. Now, where I would then go with that, or one of the places I would go, is thinking how much, you asked about, are the words that we utter the word, and how much do we separate ourselves from our words or from our actions so that we are not contained or expressed in those words and actions? How much do we say, oh, I didn't mean that, or no, I'm going to set that aside. I'm not, I'm going to say something differently now. Now, of course, in our fallibility, we are never going to be consistent, but we are what we do and what we say. and there is something there, going back to your point about, when we say the words, do we say the word? There is something there about our authenticity of expression in our speaking and our acting being part of the whole of who we are, and not separating ourselves from it, and recognizing that if we are those in whom Christ dwells, which is John's aspiration there, or aspiration to declaration there, if we are those in whom Christ dwells, then our Christ-likeness is expressed in what we say and what we do, in our own words and in our own actions. So there's something for me that about, we live in a world, because it's so full of words, where we don't actually own them. We don't claim them. We don't say, this is who we are. Yes. And it may, of course, yes, we get things wrong and we change our minds and we change, but that's part of who we are, intrinsically are, as we continue to grow and deepen in Christ. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about John 8:31-32. He who does my words, Jesus says, which is a really interesting way of putting it. He who does my words will be my disciple, and they will know the truth, and the truth will make them free. So there's something here about about what it is to, as you say, put into action and then to embody the word in his words. But also, Jesus actually spoke relatively few words as a historical figure. So, it's not as if it's a long agenda we've got here. This is pretty straightforward, boys and girls. So what is it to do his words, and so to embody the word made flesh? But the other thing that you raise there, really interesting, about the whole nature of language here, and the relation of language to creativity. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So in the beginning was the Word. Language is really essential at the beginning, but also relationship is really essential at the beginning as well, and connectivity. And all of that is fundamental to God, and part of what we are to be about too.
Yeah.